Welcome back to the Untriggered Parenting Podcast with me, Paula Sampson Lawrence. Today, my very special guest is Catherine Tyson. Catherine is an author, radio host, and parent, and today she talks with me about the power of effective communication in building connections with our children. Let's dive in. So, welcome, Catherine, to the show. It's lovely to have you here.
Finally.
To you, all the way from the Cayman Islands. So I would love you to introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit more about you and what you do.
Goodness, always a loaded question for me because, when you get to be my age, you've lived a couple of lives. Mm-hmm. So I'm a social worker by profession. I have a master's degree in social work. And so I work with families and communities and, I've done a lot of management now at this stage of my life. I am an author. I've written a couple of books, and those books came from my journey as a single mother. I started my journey as a single mother when I was 26 years old, which is literally 30 years ago.
No way!
And yes, my daughter turned 30 this year. And
she was 6 months. No way do you have a 30-year-old.
I appreciate that. Yes, and that's my baby. I have my sons are 35 and 33. Yes.
After we record, you need to give me what pill you're taking, what special water fountain.
Definitely after we record, because I don't want my husband to know what the reason is having no husband. No. So I wrote, two books. Well, one was kind of just like my journaling that turned into a book. And from that journey, I've just been on a women's empowerment, parenting kick, ladies, if you find yourself in a situation where you are a single mother, what do you do about it? And more importantly, your children should be your focus. And so I'm all about that because I do a lot of work now with young people. I've been doing this for most of my career, but working with young people as well as their families. And a lot of problems come from, not kind of getting yourself together when you find yourself in a situation and always kind of being in some sort of crisis mode. And in parenting, crisis mode that ain't where it's at, because you got ish to do. You have kids to feed. You have people that depend on you to have it together. And so that's your responsibility, because I do believe we're presenting actual adults to the world. That's what a parent's job is. That tiny little baby that you bring home from the hospital, you're literally preparing that human to be an adult in this world. So every single thing that you do is all about that. And I think that we tend to not realize that, and we're just going about our regular lives and just doing what we have to do and not really taking it really serious. So conversations with me about parenting really turn very serious. So after a while, it can be a little heavy, but I've loved the journey. I have 3 adult children who are my best friends now. I have become a grandmother, and it's just been amazing. I recently got married. Well, I got married a few years ago to a younger man who didn't have any children, and we have an 18-month-old. So,
amazing.
It's wheel and come again, as the Jamaicans would say.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of almost like starting over in a place that I've been a long time ago, but I was there as a single mother. So it's actually a great journey. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I love what you said about parenting, because I'm fully on board with you with that, because we're parenting for the future. It's for the long term. So everything you do today, the consequences are going to play out later on. And that really should influence what you're doing and what you're modeling and what you're showing and what you're teaching. Absolutely. 100%. I completely agree. But today we are talking about powerful and effective communication and the importance of sort of cultivating that in young people, really. Yeah. And I would love to know, just basically an overview, what do you consider to be effective communication, especially from the point of view of a young person?
Yeah. So I think effective communication for me when it comes to young people is that they want to be heard. They want to be listened to. They need to be listened to. They need to feel like there's a safe space.
Yeah.
And throughout my journey as a mother, going from, speaking to little children to, preteens to teenagers to now adults, to young adults to now actually, not middle age, but they're like in their 30s now. So it's a very different thing. I have a lot of experience with just the different stages of communication. And I know one of those things is really just to be heard and just to be respected. And a lot of parents, we think that we know everything. And we do know a lot of stuff. We do, and we're correct a lot of the times. But if we're not able to frame our communication correctly, we could lose opportunities with our children where they will go to other people to get advice when the advice would have been better coming from us. But because we've kind of alienated them with some, we know it all, or, you can't tell me anything, that's foolishness what you're doing, you're already going to push them away. And so when I run into young people, I see that a lot where they're just starved to have conversations of substance
Yes.
with people that respect what they're saying, even if it's foolishness, because sometimes it is foolishness.
It is. Yeah.
Sometimes
Let's be real.
Right. But in the when I get those opportunities, I get the opportunity to really help them look at it. And so when I can kind of open it up for them to look at it, because I'm a counselor by profession as well, right? So I get them to look at it and then they might be able to say, oh yeah, well, I guess that's kind of, maybe I could do this instead. I'm like, bingo, because that's what I really want. But if I said that's foolishness, I've already shut them down.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that is
I
true.
think effective communication really is listening, it's being open, it's not being judgmental, and it's having respect for the person that you're communicating with,
Yeah.
respecting their view and trying to get to the middle, trying to get to where we're both going to win. Because I think communication is really about, and everyone wins. It's not one person winning. So that's what I think about communication.
Absolutely. And I think that I'd love to hear your thoughts about this because my eldest is 14, so he's a teenager. And I realized that one of the biggest barrier to us communicating effectively is judgment. Because I used to come with a lot of judgment about what he's doing, how he's doing it, where he's going, who his friends are, and they feel, even if you don't say it, they feel that judgment from you in your tone, in how you raise your eyebrow when they said this, that, and the other. And immediately that shuts down the communication because nobody wants to feel judged.
Between 11 and 16, I called it getting over the hump. And I think 16 was the hump for me. So depending on how early they matured, because I used to think 12, and then my kids like at 10 and a half or 11, I started to see it. I was like, whoa, my gosh, I'm in a different generation here. And this is 15 plus years ago, imagine now. And so I felt like if I could get them over the hump. And so at that age, they're really trying to figure out who they are. And it is a battle between you and them because you don't understand. You just don't understand. And so that's their attitude. And I think that we need to step back a little bit from where we are, who we are, and what we do know for sure, and go back to the time when we also were trying to figure it out. And if we can stand kind of, toe to toe with them and not be mom who knows all the stuff that's right and wrong and knows that you're going down the wrong road and understand that that's not going to help the communication and just kind of stop, like literally. My daughter came to me when she was 12 years old and she said, what do you think about having sex? Of course, my mind's like, oh, Jesus, never, stop it. I don't want to hear it. But I also knew that she had little friends that might have been involved with that or getting involved with it. So the last thing she needed me to do is go, don't. So it was more like, well, what do you think about it? So, and it was like heart palpitating, what is it, palpitating or whatever, and just like, oh my God, and kind of moving from that spot and saying, here's my daughter who wants to talk to me, who wants to hear what I have to say about it, who's not hiding, which is the worst. And now she and I are able to come to a solution in the event that she decides to do this. Because regardless of whether I agreed or not, she was going to do it if she wanted to do it. That's what parents need to understand. And so I'd rather be her ally than her enemy, because if I'm her enemy, she's going to be hiding from me and she's going to be putting herself at risk. And then that risk is going to filter over into my life because she's my daughter forever and ever. So if I get a pregnant teenager at 12, I got to deal with a pregnant teenager at 12.
Yeah,
so
that
right?
is so true.
So it really was about helping her process through that, and it was so beautiful that I actually was able to see, and my sons as well as my daughter, I was able to see when they were in those type of dilemmas that they actually thought a lot more like me than I gave them credit for. But I was able to allow them to do that thinking. And so when we were able to kind of dissect it and process it, and then me say, if that's something that you think that you want, you're going to be considering, then it's something that I want us to talk about to ensure that, you're protected and, your whole life is not going to be destroyed or altered as a result. And I mean, I was dying inside, like dying, like my 12-year-old, Jesus, so good that I had to just hold this. I tell parents, hold yourself together, just hold yourself together somehow. And the beautiful part is, with doing that, I was able to have this little friend who'd come over to me and go, Mommy, Troy? And Troy he was trying to touch me today. And I was just like, I'm gonna kill Troy, and she's like, and I told him, you get your hands off me. I'm not that girl. And I was like, oh, thank God. But I know had I pushed back, I might have pushed her in the wrong direction. I might have pushed her in the direction of, getting opinions from her friends and foolishness that they were doing that she'd think is okay. And so that's what I tell parents, you have to be willing to put your feet down on that ground and stay steady through the mess and know that they're going to be okay. If you can get them through the hump, Now, I had boys, and so I had to put things in place because I didn't want them to start smoking weed early, things like that, things that would definitely affect them and affect our relationship. So I had to put things in place. Like I had to be drop-off mom. I had to be, house full of young boys mom. Like, my fridge was always empty. It was always noisy. It was always a hot mess, but I could see my boys. And so, and their friends were very comfortable coming to Miss Catherine because, I wasn't judging them and they had this safe space. And even to this day, I have 30-year-old, young men putting on Facebook, this woman has, she made my childhood. And I have my picture there. I'm like, me, I couldn't even stand that guy. Is that what he's saying about me? Oh, that's so sweet. But it was because I knew that I had to do certain things or sacrifice some things in my own life, like privacy or needing to get up, at 11 o'clock at night and get on that road and go pick my children up from the little party or whatever, instead of some parents who they can't go or, other little things like that, or get a ride home, however, or you can sleep over whoever isn't. No, honey, I was not that mother. So I think communication is real. And that was a long answer. I'm sorry. But
no, it was fine.
I think that communication with your children is so important, but standing in the space where you want them to keep coming back and talking to you and being careful with how you answer them and how your your heart affects your mouth, and then that shuts them down.
Yeah, no, those are really good tactics. And I think also you mentioned, I think it's more active listening, isn't it? Letting them get it out, because how can they be effective communicators if we don't let them practice, if we're always
have to let it
shutting
out.
them down? And I loved I just want to go back to a couple of things you said, because I think these are sort of barriers to parents getting their children to be effective communication, and it affects the communication between parent and child, which we already mentioned judgment, but you also mentioned you're managing your reaction. So try not to overreact and fall over when they say something to you, because once you overreact, they're going to remember, don't tell mum that, don't tell mum stuff like that, So it's important that we also know what to do but also
Yeah.
what not to do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you know what I did too? I had three kids growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my sons are 19 months apart and they're like night and day. One loves to be outside in the bicycle climbing trees, running up and down. One loves to be inside on the computer. So when I had to find something, to take away, like if I was punishing them for something, or I couldn't take the bike away from the guy who was always inside. He had a bike, but he didn't care. But
Yeah.
if I took the bike away from that guy, like that's his whole life, because
Mm-hmm.
he got to ride down the street and see what's happening. And then if I took the computer away from that guy, he couldn't care less. So you also have to like balance that out. But what I did find with three different personalities is that I would try to carve out times for us by ourselves. So um, when I did that, like I might walk down the street with that one and go to the canal where he would fish, and then he and I could talk a little different while he's fishing, or I'm fishing with him and he's teaching me how to fish. And so the other ones weren't there to interrupt, because it
Yes.
becomes difficult when you have more than one child. And so what I'm talking about is building relationships. Because if you build a relationship with your children, it's going to be easier to communicate with them because they're going to
Mm.
trust you. It's about building trust. And between 11 and 16, man, they don't trust anybody. Like,
Yeah.
who they trust are their homies, and that's why gang culture is so prominent for young men and women, right? Because they got that their people. So I
Mm.
wanted to be their people. I had to be very, very careful, with how I went about it. And I
Yeah.
definitely didn't want them hiding. I tried my best to know what was happening in your world as much as I could so that I could
Yeah.
have some sort of influence. At least if I didn't have information, I couldn't have any influence. But information would help me have influence. And raising kids it is scary. It is, I mean, right now I have, 30, they're in their 30s and I worry about them every single moment.
Mm.
One's he wants to go to Thailand for a year. He's married. I'm like, you think that's a good idea?
Stay with your wife.
Really? Why? He's like, Mommy, I'm married, right? I don't care. You're going to be really far away from me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so parenting is, that's that heart-wrenching stuff, but
Yeah.
because they mean so much to us, then we have to really push ourselves out of our comfort zone to
Yeah.
ensure that we are creating the relationships with them.
I would love to move it into the importance of helping them build this muscle of good
Yeah,
communication and how that
yeah,
affects them in school, peer-to-peer relationships,
yeah,
in the job market, because I think it's foundational, isn't it? So this is the core relationship, the parent and child one. So
right.
how does getting them to be effective communicators aid them as they grow up?
So in my second book, I have one of the chapters. I deal with communication as well, but that I'm raising thinking people. I want people that are thinking, and
Yes.
so that's the muscle we're talking about. So I think with our discussions, it's less about what I'm telling them, and it's more about what they're learning and how they're
Mm.
processing it. And so, for instance, I had when my 4-year-old daughter is climbing up on the counter, and she's cooking, like she's I don't know, she's like frying an egg, and she's there next to the stove with her little dress, and I come into the kitchen and I'm like, what are you doing? What's happening? But before I freaked out, I said, um, do you think you're safe? Like, just look around. I just want you to look
Mm.
around. And she looked around and saw her situation, and she was like, oh, you know? And like there are moments when I would do that to them, like, well, what do you think? Like, just look around. What do
Mm.
you think about that? And it's pushing them to think about it. It's not solving their problem for them. It's helping them to solve their own problem, because I'm not going to be there all the time. They're going to have to make decisions
Yes.
outside of me telling them what to do. And remember, we're raising them to be adults,
Yes. Yeah.
being adults, to be independent people, right?
And
So
that's
I think,
important,
yeah.
isn't it?
And you know what? And it takes longer than saying, get down. That's quicker.
Yeah.
It's quicker to just pop, it's quicker to do that. What I'm talking
Yeah.
about, it's going to take some more time. It's going to be a pain in the butt. It's going to be, annoying. It's going to be all that stuff. But hey, when you sign up to be a parent, honey,
that is what it is.
That's what it is. And because you love them so much and you want the best from them, you want them to be the best as adults, then you sign up for that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Buck up and just do what you got to do.
I would love for you to sort of summarize. So, two things maybe that absolutely you should be doing to help your children become better communicators, and two things that you shouldn't be doing that you probably are instinctively doing but you shouldn't be. So that parents, our listeners, can take away something that they can go, okay, let me be self-aware about what I'm doing with that. Because I think we've talked a lot about things that we shouldn't be doing, like the judgment, not listening. Just very quickly, actually, that's why with back talk, and the parents talk a lot about back talk. And really, sometimes I think back talk is just practicing communicating. And if we want them to stand up to people outside of the home, we kind of need to let them stand up to us sometimes, Obviously, we teach them respect and all that kind of stuff. But how else are they going to practice if they don't push back? They've got to practice that pushback on someone. Otherwise, they'll get into a situation where someone says, do this, and they are like, okay, because they've never been able to, so that's important, teaching them to be empowered, to stand up for themselves. And that starts with practicing on their parent.
Yeah, exactly. So two things you should be doing is actively creating a relationship with you and your children, and not just kind of see it as, well, I'm the adult and you're a kid, period. No, that's not going to be a way to create a relationship. Because just think about you in a romantic relationship. You want to be respected. You want to be listened to. You don't want a spouse that doesn't respect you. It doesn't. Every time you say something, they're disagreeing with it, and you don't like that. To just respect, right? And create that relationship. Create a safe space for them. Let them talk. Let them tell you what's happening in their life. Let them know that it's okay to tell you what's happening in their life, because you need to know. If you don't know, then you don't know what to do. And that would be the gift that you give to them. And the beautiful part about that is that I'm really able to enjoy an amazing relationship with three amazing people that are the best friends I've ever had in my life, that love me more than anybody. And it's because of the parent that I have been to them their whole life, and I think every parent, might want that. And if you do want that, then you have to start creating a relationship. So relationship is really important. Being a part of their world. And so I think I kind of covered more than two things. And two things that I'd say to stop doing is stop telling children what they should be doing and you're not doing those things.
Oh, yes.
So we're very contradictory, and children are watching everything that we do. And when they get old enough, they start telling us about it. And we don't like it. We feel really bad. And then, then we get angry, and then it's the whole thing. So that's one thing I would say. Make sure that you're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Let the standards be for you also, not the do as I say, not as I do. And another thing I think that we need to I guess do less of is, social media and the phone. We can find ourselves so caught up in that we don't even find the time for our children anymore. Like, you have to find time for your children, and I know that we're very busy and the world can get crazy and we just want a release too. But our children really need us. They need us to be there. They need us to pay attention, and they feel safe when we pay attention to them. So those are, I would say those would be two things that I would, and less criticism, and knowing where your children are, at what stage they're at. So these days, I think we're children are a lot more fragile than they were. And so we don't realize that. So even if we were parented like, you know, my mom might have called me nappyhead or something like that. She's Spanish, right? And she'd say that, yeah, because you get your nappyhead from your father. Like, I'd never say that to my child, right?
No, yeah.
Because that affected me. And we don't realize some of our little comments that we make, you know, that it's making our children feel small. It's making our children not feel good. And when you were talking about back talking, and so before I say that, so another thing in my book, I have sing their praises. So be their biggest fan. So make sure that you balance criticism with your compliments, and make sure that your compliments are bigger than criticism. So criticize less and appreciate them more. So sing their praises more than you find things wrong with them. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think that we don't realize that that's so big. And we're the person that needs to fill them up. So when they go out into the world and the world tries to knock them down, they're like,
yeah, that's
no.
right.
I'm all that. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
And when it comes to back talking, you're right. That's their opportunity, you know, to express themselves and it should be okay for them to disagree. And I think when you have a more collaborative relationship with your children, it's better for them, because now we live in a house where I'm not the big boss. I do make the final decisions because I'm the person that is the adult, and I go to work, I make the money, and I pay the bills. But you also are people. And so it was a very collaborative relationship. So I've always had that open, and being a single mother, it was easy to do that. When you do have like right now with my husband, I don't know how collaborative we're going to be because he's also Jamaican, and they're very, you know, very strict. He's a lot more stricter than I am. And so it's interesting just to see it with our 18-month-old, that I am definitely the more reasonable. Okay, come on. But he's learning from me also. But yeah, allowing them to express themselves with respect.
Yeah.
With respect. So no, you can't be telling me off. You can't be, you know, don't cursing, please, you know.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Because it's respect. And right now I have 3 adult children that I don't know if I have ever cursed at them, or they've ever cursed like a bad word at me. And the other day, one of my sons was saying, you know, mommy, you'd always say you don't like people being barbaric. And it's funny that he used that word, because that's the word that I would say. Like, that's barbaric. I don't need to be cussing people out, and because you can talk to me. You can tell me something. And I found that they were able to do the same thing with me. So when they were at a certain age, they were like, hey, you don't have to raise your voice. You can just talk to me, you know, I can hear. Just talk. And I was like, okay, so that's how we can work it out. Okay, no problem. I don't want to yell, but you need to listen.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, excellent. That's excellent advice. I think our listeners will get a lot from that. So just as we're wrapping up, I just wanted to share where people can follow you and find you on social media or your website, buy your books. So feel free to share that information with us.
Okay. So I'm very, I guess, very visible on social media. I'm on Instagram, my name, Real Catherine Tyson. Also Facebook, Catherine Tyson. You can find me under my name. I do TikTok too. They've got me into TikTok a little bit. And I do a lot of one-on-one trainings. I do some group stuff, you know, group parenting things. I do a lot of training, facilitating for the corporate world as well. So I've been training for like maybe 20 years. And I also my books can be found on Amazon. So Amazon, I guess the UK one or .com, just look up Catherine Tyson. My first book is called I'm Somebody's Mama. And it's really kind of a humorous celebration of my life as a single mother. It was kind of like, can you believe this happened to me? And the second one is Single Mama, Powerful, Not Pitiful. And the reason that I even stayed with that demographic is because I do feel like single mothers feel that they are at a disadvantage, and therefore their kids are. And I say, stop thinking about like that. Stop thinking about that. Stop thinking like that. you're great, you're going to be great, your kid's going to be great, that you got to stop thinking that you're pitiful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just look me up, if you Google me, you'll find me all over the place.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today, and thank you for all your great advice and sharing some of your family, interactions with us to really help us. So thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.